All right, let me test this. Make sure the microphone is working. It is. So I wanted to discuss or otherwise contrast two groups of people. A while back, I was talking about Trump supporters and their almost blind devotion to Trump, and I've given a lot of liberals credit for being able to admit where their candidate is flawed or otherwise has problems or something that is opposed to what they themselves personally think. So that is something I would compliment them for. The other group wouldn't get. But what I've seen in the last 2 years is an almost very high level of suspicion centering around. Let me say hello to Dirk. It's been a while. Centering around people that are progressive and their supporters. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's go back to the 2016 Democratic primary. This is, obviously the Bernie and Hillary race, and a lot of progressives getting turned off by Elizabeth Warren's refusal to endorse Bernie during the primary, and her still to this day getting comments from people, expressing their disappointment with her and how angry they were and how upset they were. And it seems like, in her defense, not to her defense, but I do think it showed a little bit of cowardice to not come out and endorse him, especially when we had Merkley, who's not even considered a progressive, or at least one of the leading ones, come out and say something. But I would bet that she calculated the way it would work was that Hillary would win the primary, which she did, and then win the general, and then she would have more influence by being a Clinton supporter during the primary or during the election or whatever, versus being someone that dissented during the primary and had their guy lose. And, it was all this political pragmatism thing. And obviously it didn't work out the way she wanted. So now she's reeling with the consequences of it, which I still think are a little excessive, because we're talking about someone knowing that the Democrats geared themselves toward supporting this one candidate and everybody else that doesn't want to play ball, having to make accommodations. I mean, you guys saw what happened to, the Tulsi Gabbard, where she had to resign her seat to endorse Bernie, and then Obama called up the DNC officials to stop Keith Ellison from getting the chairmanship of the party. So it's a lot of crooked stuff going in the background, but it's all geared around that same center group of people being able to just get away and do whatever they want. And anyone who seems to be opposed to that venture getting cummed after. A little sexual reference there. Warren just made a safe decision, a horrible one, but safe, what everyone thought, because Hillary had an easy chance to win. Yeah, they did think that. You're right. That's why those Trump can't win compilation videos are still very amusing and comedic, just as a catalog of all the statements that were made. There used to be an Obama one, and then somebody apparently got rid of it. But I remember there was one where they also listed all the times people said he couldn't do it. But I wanted to also kind of use that to segue into these other candidates. Because if you remember, Dirk, and I'm sure you've heard this reported before, when you think of potential presidential candidates on the Democratic side, you think of Booker, Harris, Gillibrand, now O'Rourke. And I've seen people go after all of these options, and I'm more mixed on all of those, because I don't like Booker. The Obama one was comical. Same with, it was very amusing. But I don't, I have my reasons for not liking Booker, and I'd like to do a separate video about that where I just catalog all of them in chronological order. But with someone like Harris, I have to admit, when you look at her votes, and look, my thing with her is mainly the Mnuchin thing, where he donated to her campaign and then she didn't prosecute him even after her people found evidence of wrongdoing on his part. But if you look at her votes in the Senate, the only one I've really drawn an issue with or a frustration with was the $854 billion spending bill. There's some spending bill where it was Bernie and like 6 Republicans are the only ones to oppose it. Other than that, I don't have a problem with how she votes. And so it's harder for me to look at someone who's voting the way I want them to and say, you're a bad person, go away. Now, do I think she's not corrupt? No, I think she's probably trying to position herself to be able to say, oh, I'm a lot like Bernie, which is why I vote the same way that he does, and blah, 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 blah. But I'm not upset at someone for doing what I want them to do. Yeah, Dirk, Harris over Booker any day, exactly. Um, and it's funny that when I think about the thing with Gillibrand is how she is the poster child of having one political role model and then that person gets smashed, or we find out she realizes that person isn't that popular, and then she just switches over. So if you look at Gillibrand's time in the House, she was a blue dog Democrat, voted conservatively, and then after uh, this last presidential election, and she realizes, oh man, being a corporatist isn't really that appealing. We don't tend to have a big base of voters that really like us for anything. She starts changing her tune and pretending to to now be progressive. But it's similar to Harris in that it's another part of that string where I would rather they vote in a progressive manner and then have me thinking, oh, the person is not actually of that ideology to where they could be trusted, versus, yeah, we know who you are, which is why I think a lot of these Democrats are more dangerous than Republicans, because they get a lot of people. Oh, Dana, that was going to be in the video. For like, it's going to be called Cory Booker is garbage, and here's why. And that'll be the first thing that gets mentioned out of his Senate votes. Yeah, that is an atrocity. And I don't know if you heard about the anti-Israel boycott act, but that's something else. Him being against freedom of speech. That I guess he thinks that's cute. So that's coming. Be on the lookout for that. But continuing with what I was saying, then you go over to O'Rourke, who I knew the least about, even during the race in Texas. All I knew was that he was better than Cruz because he was. I mean, it's Cruz, but they've started putting out stuff where he's met with Israel officials. He's sworn his support for them, and it's all that centrist stuff I don't like. So when that starts coming up, you're left with this difficult decision, because now when you say I have a problem with O'Rourke or Harris or Booker or Gillibrand or whoever the hell, people will say, well, that you're a Republican, you're a closet Republican. They have this thing where they think when you talk about one side, that's some endorsement of the other. Yeah, anything is better than Cruz, Dirk. I just wish people in Texas realized that. Well, they did, which is why over 100,000 people stayed home that voted for him the previous time. I keep having to make that point because people have this thing where they think, oh yeah, all of his supporters are so true to him, and blah, 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 blah. Like, no. If you look at how the margin in 2012, he had 4.4 million votes. This time around, it was like 4.2. So that means this person was able to get 100,000 people, a tenth of a million people to say, you know what, screw you, and just show up. And in any other state, that would have messed them up, other than here, California or New York. But in most states, that's a problem. That's a failure. And his election was a failure, which is why he only won by 2 points in a deep red state, the deepest of red states, supposedly. To beat politicians like Cruz, you have to have someone like Richard Ojeda primary and take over. Oh yeah, the primary challenges, I love those, because that's when you actually get to make the argument of, hey, my person's better because of reason A, B, C, and D. And then during the general, they go, what do you mean you're thinking of launching a third party bid? You're gonna sink the vote for the Democrat and get the Republican in there. And then when you bring up ranked choice voting and how that would eliminate the need to force someone to vote for the lesser of two evils without going for the person that they actually like all the way, they just completely turn their brains off. They don't want to hear about that, because they'd rather whine and complain about you tanking the election, as if all the people who vote for the Green Party were going to vote for the Democrat, which is very funny, especially since they've done this thing where they now blame Sanders and third parties for giving us Trump. But it's like, dude, it's 12% of Bernie supporters that voted for Trump, whereas 25% of Clinton voters voted for McCain after she lost to Obama in the 2008 primary. So it's not even they don't say anything about that. They get it's nice that back then they got to choose and pick what Democrat they could support. Is mentioned, all you hear is crickets. Yeah, because a lot of people don't know about it. There are just a lot of topics that people, if they knew about, and it was conveyed in a manner to where you said, hey, screw talking about the Democrats or Republicans. Let me just mention to you what we're doing in this country. They would say that's horrible, that's terrible, which is why the media purposely doesn't talk about those things. They're kept in the dark. But I'm getting off topic here. I wanted to go back into what I was saying. Going back to this thing with these different Democratic candidates, I find it kind of comical that the same people who 2 years ago, like, we had this thing with Barbara Lee and what's his name, Jeffries or whatever, where he beat her for the Democratic conference chair. And I think they asked him about Medicare for all, and he goes, I'm a pragmatic progressive. So it's funny how we have the Democrats. It's like this dual narrative where they want to tell you, no, we need our centrist guys to be at the top. They need to be the ones that we're worried about. And then all of the progressive stuff, because it keeps showing to be popular with actual living, breathing humans that haven't ran for office before or aren't in some position of power. They're being forced to now have to say, okay, well, yeah, we can kind of see your point on that. Yeah, we'll get 30 people to back this. It won't pass, but we'll pretend to be in favor of that as well. Dana says ranked choice voting was proven effective in Maine. Yeah, and it really sucks because referring to that Senate race, the one with Angus King, the Democrat in that race was probably the best one, at least out of all the non-office, and even if they're included, other than maybe Sherrod Brown, that ran during those Senate elections. And it's a real shame that he wasn't able to pull that off. But again, it was a three-person race. He said he might run again. He'll run against Susan Collins. So I'll have to promote him on here, much like a lot of progressive legislation. Yeah, no, Dirk. That's why I find it very strange that we even have this debate about whether to keep Pelosi. And we've talked about this repeatedly, where if you go up and you say to any people who back her, what good is she? You get the same three responses. She passed Obamacare. Then they tell you about the platitude of her being strong or effective or adapting or whatever the hell. And then 3 is you're sexist. That's the way politics are now. Like who we like, or you have some kind of inherent bias against me for something that's not policy based, even if you bring up policy specifics. I swear, it feels like a bizarro world when you notice because I brought this up before. She has a 29% approval rating, so it always feels really strange and kind of weird when you actually see people who genuinely support her. Like, they exist, but there's so few of them that it's strange. It's weird. It's like you guys didn't get the memo. She sucks. Thanks opposing. Oh yeah. Well, again, all these people were quiet when the Democrats were telling us about how old Bernie was. They didn't say anything about saying shut up, don't disqualify him based on age. So it's nice how they can be convenient with when they have principles about certain things. That's really cute. That's a nice little feature. But yeah, I was watching one of Secular Talks videos, and he mentioned that he considers Warren a half corporatist. I remember being really weirded out because I've talked to other self-proclaimed progressives, and they just have kept that going where she says this but she really does that. I'm like, are you sure? I've looked at her voting record. I mean, I'm not trying to call any of these people stupid because there are we can criticize all these people. It really seems like the only progressive I can't say anything about at all to anybody that is of the same ideology as Bernie, who has been appointed Jesus Christ. And I think he's way better than everybody else. But the point is, whenever I think that it's part of that, they start going into that tribalist thing I don't like, because they see him so oftentimes be assaulted by Democrats and Republicans, as well as the media, that they think that when some person that they call themselves being on the same team or side with does the same thing, even if they admit that they like most of his stuff, it's just this unhinged attack on him. And I don't agree with that perspective, but I get it. Only positive I see is a possible deal to have a Justice Democrat caucus. Yeah, but the problem with that is if they try to get together and do anything, do you really expect Pelosi to even bother with it? That's my thing. That they're sitting over here, and that's why I really hate that these congressional discussions aren't open to the public. Whereas they go and vote on some random thing that nobody knows about, and you can watch a video of that for like 3 hours on C-SPAN. They have these backroom deals, right? And they go, "Oh, Pelosi in her little voice going, if you vote for me, I'll make sure that you guys can get your Green Deal legislation passed on the floor." And then they go, "Okay, yeah, sure. That means we'll get our stuff done. All right, cool." And so then they go and they introduce their thing in February, March, April of next year. Then she completely ignores them, and she gets away with it because it's only like what 7, 8 people who really want that. And everybody else is kind of I'm worried about opposing Leader Pelosi because I don't want my seat to be primaried. Even though I don't do anything, but that's another story. So, do you see how that backroom deal is already kind of screwing them over and us over? Because they're running with this stuff because they think it's going to help the people, which is not a bad strategy or not a bad. It's like your heart is in the right place, but the approach isn't effective. Like I remember with Ocasio-Cortez getting so excited about the Green New Deal with her showing up at that protest in her office and going, "Wow, she really has a lot of guts. Oh my God." Just for a few weeks later for her to go, "Oh yeah, I'll support Pelosi if she's the main progressive in the like, what?" So it's them talking out of two sides of their mouth. It's like during the presidential election that, or rather the primary, you had Bernie sitting here and talking about the need to change American foreign policy, but to not piss off Obama supporters, he wouldn't directly say anything about how the last 8 years of being in all of these different wars has been a failure because he didn't want to alienate people who like both of them or that he thought would like him if he liked them. Oh yeah, better. No, no, she's better than the Blue Dogs, but I'm trying to say that there's so many of them that it becomes harder to fend this stuff off. And it feels like with a lot of these people, God, being a progressive is so awful. When you don't want to cater to the whims of a party just because it's a political party. So when you actually try to use your own brain and say, okay, screw liking the Democrats just because they're Democrats. If I'm going to like the Democrats, they have to want to be out of all these wars and actually have policies I like. You're going to get flack from Democrats while also getting the expected flack from the Republicans, from the right. Um, so this ends up being their fate that when they're in office, they have people behind the door. Like let's say I was a representative, they would have people going, "Oh, Democrats, I can't believe Justin decided to block that. He's messing with Leader Pelosi. How dare he?" And then the Republicans are going, "Yeah, all those dumb socialist, communist, progressives." So both you're just getting shelled on from both sides, and then your own supporters. And this is the point of this video. See you trying to make a compromise or a deal or whatever, and they go, "Wait a second, why is Justin working with the Republicans? Why is he working with the Blue Dogs? Oh, he's not really progressive. I don't care about his voting record." That's how they roll, and that's not a bad perspective when it comes to certain people. Look at Gillum, endorsed Hillary during the election, and then afterward, runs as a progressive in this primary, and then starts pivoting to the right. Obviously, we saw what happened after that, but he didn't have a record as mayor or as a senator because he wasn't one. Where we could say, no, 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 he's saying one thing that we might not be entirely enthused about the rhetoric of it, but he's always voted this way or done this that way. So it would still be a problem with the way the message is being conveyed rather than the actual governing. If you catch my drift. Yeah, being a progressive is awful, Dirk. You have to you I swear if you could see the Twitter comments I've had, so many people accuse me of having some agenda of trying to destroy the Democrats. And I'm like, dude, I'm destroying them for what? So the Republicans that I also criticize can win. you talking about? We remember the video I had to do about the idiot that said I was incompetent to say that the Arizona race was the lesser of two evils, even though I said that it was that way because both the Democrat and the Republican voted with Trump over 60% of the time, a majority of the time. And all these people call themselves disliking Trump, but they won't get mad when their representative or Senate nominee or whatever the hell votes with him most of the time. I mean, like that's what I'm talking about. It's just a bunch of people who want to play this label thing of pretending to be so enthused by the Democrats just because they're Democrats, and then they get mad when someone else doesn't want to play the same game. Which is exactly why they, choose to go after people who don't share their little perspective of accepting whatever's put before them that has a D next to its name. Dirk says pivoting is backstabbing your base. Yeah, and he paid for it. I've seen the tweets you get in that video and the message that just flows over his head. Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. These people, like, I stopped responding to messages on Twitter for that reason. I don't see any communication worth having. I don't even leave comments on other people's stuff that often because it's just a bunch of people who, when you lay out the reasons and your perspective on something with facts or statistics, whatever, they will do one of three things. They will say you're a liar, just dismiss whatever you said. They will try to argue against it when again you weren't looking for an argument. Or they will, try to pretend as if what you said didn't happen, which I guess is kind of similar to it. It's different from saying climate change isn't real because they might actually think the person is telling the truth as far as them actually believing this exists, which it does. But in their head, they don't, because they're so believing of everything Republicans tell them, they just sit there and buy into it. They believe all the scientists in the world was like 99% got together to tell Dirk and his girlfriend Ocasio-Cortez some lie about the climate changing by human activity. Just for the hell of it, they all just said let's launch a worldwide conspiracy. Jesus Christ, we have more people who believe Obama was born in whatever other country than that actually believe in the reality of climate change, thanks to Republicans. So good job on that one. That's quite an accomplishment. It's time wasted like screaming into a wall. Yeah, but then I still have people who to this day act as though they're surprised why I don't participate in loads of these discussions. Like I sit here and I see these this kind of thing as people of a similar mindset just discussing an idea or topic versus me going to a random person on the street and going, hey, can I have a political discourse with you? Because I don't see the purpose of doing it. Too many people aren't realizing that you have a slim minority of people in office, these progressives who, because they're not beholden to donors, forget being left wing, they don't feel a need to start lying about what the actual what the problems of these issues are. So they're more likely to be a lot more accurate or honest about what they actually believe than someone who is bought out. That's a very simple concept that I just explained to you in less than a minute. That, to the credit again of these progressives, even though I disagree with the tactic of stabbing our own what do you call it, getting up that so upset at your own people that you just abandon them completely. They get that, but there's too few of them. And so, now what they end up having to do in every election is fight off three things: massive voter ignorance, because a lot of people don't know about this thanks to the media, getting their name out there because the media works to suppress any information about them, and trying to make this work enough while battling having less money more often than not than whoever they're running against. So it's just this thing where they've got so much stuff stacked against them. And if they lose, what's his name? Jake Tapper on CNN gets to ask Bernie, how come the people that you're running aren't winning? I don't get it. Like, all these factors just didn't happen. Oh my God, people would still vote for them if lobbyists were put in the spot. I still think it wouldn't change anything. Yeah, people are not bright. I really believe the only way this is ever going to get fixed is if both sides get infiltrated, like all this stuff about overtaking over the Democratic Party. Get the Republicans to flip too. Get a Republican that is, pro life, all the other little dumb social issue stuff, anti-gay marriage, whatever, for no reason. But they're anti-war, they're anti-spending all this money on all these different conflicts that we have overseas. And that's the only way we'll be able to really start seeing a genuine shift in this problem. And the progressives aren't trying to do that. Get more Rand Pauls to take over. Yeah, look, I hate his positions on domestic issues. They're terrible, but on foreign policy, he's easily one of the best senators we have at this point, anyway. Told you he votes with Trump the least out of any of the Republicans. And what's funny is that Trump and his base are too stupid to realize that, because they don't pay attention to the Senate for the most part, or go on places like 538 or any of these other websites which track congressional votes. So they're more upset with somebody like Murkowski or Collins for, voting with Trump a lot more, but still having their one vote, their one dissenting vote be spotlighted, become this big deal. Don't let him control the economy. Oh yeah, well, we need more regulations on that too. Here we go again. We're in favor of deregulating and free market so that the people at the top can find ways to get socialism for themselves and make their workers who are working full-time have to use food stamps and drain a county. That's how dumb it is. But that's a simple thing to get, and people turn their brains off. Just like with me, I only use Twitter just to share the military budget thing over, because like months later, it's still really stupid to me that even happened, but that also people as a collective seem to only be pissed about that for one day. So it's this thing where it's never gone away from being talked about daily, just because one person talks about it over and over again, like 20, 30, 40, 50 times a day. Just tweet, 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 tweet. But people aren't doing that with most of this stuff. You don't have a lot of individuals who are looking to really say, hey, look at this one law that legalized bribery. Look at this one thing that, like I could go and share a video about why the Democrats and Republicans are the same. And I would still have idiots saying, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're saying. What do you mean? And I give progressives a lot of credit for being able to separate themselves from the two-party system and say, yeah, this is bad. This sucks. I don't really care how bad the other person is. If my side is terrible too, I'm going to say it is. Outsourcing jobs right after getting tax cuts. The news that happened recently with oh yeah. You're going a little bit faster than I can handle, Dirk. I like how Envoy just decided to retire from participating in the stream. That was really comedic to me. He was like, yeah, I'm done with this. You guys, you can have your own little topic thing. And that's another example of someone that didn't agree with me on all this different stuff. See, the greatest fallacy that's been made about a lot of these progressives or supporters of these candidates is that they have the litmus testing. And even though they do have stuff that they like and that they want all their candidates to support, which I would think everybody has, they're still flexible in a number of ways. Like none of them are whining about the fact that, Richard Ojeda admits to voting for Trump, because they don't care about that. They recognize there were two crappy options, one of which might have seemed more appealing to him 2 years ago that he now says is terrible. And they accept that. You don't see any of these people downing Ojeda getting pissed that Oprah was suggested as a presidential candidate after supporting the Iraq War. But again, they get to have their character arc and their time to change and be different from what they were 10, 15 years ago. But anyone who they already have a problem with, let's smear them. Let's keep talking about that one thing, because if we mention that, it breaks off everything else. Just like to this day, you have conservatives who will bring up, let's say, Ted Kennedy. Whenever you talk about, oh, this one Republican Congress member did this or did they go, well, he killed the women in Chappaquiddick. And like, so does that mean the guy that you're over there defending until your last breath is now pardoned of all wrongdoing? He can do whatever he wants. Like, do you see how the whataboutism that is just so commonplace with all of these party loyalists and worshipers. It drives me crazy because they're not thinking practically. All the bad stuff that this other person did, who you don't even know if I'm a fan of that person or not, does not make your guy good. One that fake populist, the other that wanted to keep status quo and spew. I'm with her. Yeah, what does that even mean? By the way, I was thinking of doing a live stream where I watched the Washington Journal from I think it was 2 days ago, and just like react to all the people who called in and their responses and mock them over what they said, because I think that would be funny. And just like the ridiculousness of what they were talking about. You need to put Pelosi back in there because she's the only one that can fight Trump. Is that why he was able to get Obamacare? The same thing you brag about her being the only one who was able to put in place. And if that was such a great law, why did the Democrats lose the most seats out of any election in the House between then and World War II? It's like anytime you know the facts of this stuff, you can break their stuff down so easily. I get told, "Oh, you're so smart." No, it's just sit down, read these statistics, and think critically about it. It's so simple. No wonder millions of people don't vote. I don't blame them. They see through the scam. And I shouldn't even say, because I don't even know if they're all progressive, but they know that it is becoming it is a thing that a lot of people have reason to believe makes no difference. When you have two candidates on both major party tickets that advocate for a majority of the same things, or just the same things for the most part, what's the difference? An open scam, yeah. Just like Citizens United, legalized bribery, and no one, dude. There are so many idiots on like Twitter and these other websites. When you bring up corruption, they go, "That's why we need term limits." I'm like, you idiots! You really believe that a congressman having one term, and this is why, again, I like progressives over these other classes of people. They recognize that there's only a few individuals that they can trust, that have been proven over the course of decades. They would have never been able to do that if we had term limits. Bernie, if we had term limits in the House, or 3 terms in the House, would have been out of office 20 years ago. But they like that person, so they bring him back, and they should be able to do that. Anybody. But they really believe if you just magically install this set number of years, they can just stop the person from being able to do anything corrupt. It's like Cruz has had 1 term in the Senate, and he was able to get all this NRA money, just like Rubio, who's had 1.5, as well as Hatch, who's been there since the late 70s. Well, I think the 6th longest serving senator ever. Don't quote me on that. Let me look it up. Let's find out. That would be another interesting stream, just to talk about the people who were in office the longest, and make the point of why term limits are dumb, and how that's a Republican idea, by the way. But a lot of people don't even know much about history for 50 more terms. Yeah, I wish, and he could if he were to live that long. But that whole term limit thing is really dumb to me. Me and a lot of people have disagreed no stronger on that than any other issue. Yeah, Hatch is the 6th longest serving one, because they have this idea that you just put one thing in place and everything is going to get so much better and great and whatever. It's just being lazy critically again. But yeah, there's an inherent problem with a lot of these candidates. I think progressives are cheering on the right people. I just wish they didn't have these. It just seems like a real quickness to abandon anyone that they call themselves being a fan of that isn't Bernie or Warren. And even with her, man, I wish I could go back to the world before 3 years ago. She was their little darling angel for those first 2 years in the Senate. They treated her very well, and then right after that election took place. But yeah, Dirk, I'm gonna get off of here. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Dana. I appreciate it. Have a good day.